Perfect. Welcome, everybody. My name is Julio Navarrete. Today, I'll be sharing some strategies for supporting undocumented students at your school or institution. Our agenda for today, I'll share a little bit more about myself, and then we'll go over specifically who are undocumented students. I'm going to share a personal narrative, and then we'll go into some concrete strategies that you can use to support undocumented students that you might work with. We'll have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. So Chad already mentioned a little bit about my bio, but I want to also add that I have a strong passion for social justice work, specifically as it pertains to environmental work and immigration rights. When in 2011 to 2013, I took a break from teaching and I worked for a nonprofit organization based in San Francisco called Immigrants Rising. With Immigrants Rising, I was the arts and creativity manager, specifically working with undocumented young people to create creative stories, pieces, art that was based on the immigration experience, both as a way of processing and externalizing, empowering ourselves, but also as a way of educating the broader community about these experiences. So a lot of the information that I'll be sharing today comes from Immigrants Rising's website. So you can check them out at immigrantsrising.org. So let's get started. First, a little bit of information about who are undocumented students. And I know that the information today is specifically for students in the United States, but I know that we might have audience participants from other countries. So the information today, specifically the strategies, can pertain to other immigrant groups outside of the United States as well. So in the US, an undocumented student can be defined as a foreign national who entered the US without inspection or with fraudulent documents, who entered legally as a non-immigrant, so with a visa, but then violated the terms of their status and remain in the US without authorization, somebody who has deferred action for childhood arrival status or who has previously had DACA. And I'll talk a little bit more about DACA in the next few slides. Or somebody who is otherwise currently in the process of legalizing their status. I also want to point out here that there's various reasons why a person will see the need to leave their home country and pack up whatever they own and try to start a new life in a country that is foreign to them, that they don't know. These reasons can include natural disasters, they can include financial hardship, persecution, or various reasons, but it's definitely not an easy decision to leave your home and try to start a new life somewhere else. Most undocumented students in the United States have been in the US most of their lives. They have come as babies or small children. Most of them have learned English. They've attended elementary, middle, and high school in the US. They've completed high school and want to pursue a college education, but they currently lack a way to become legal residents or citizens in the US. I really want to highlight this last bullet point because there can be misconceptions about why undocumented immigrants remain undocumented. I often hear people ask, why don't they just apply? Why don't they go through the process of legalizing their status? And so it's important to understand that in the United States, somebody who is here without status currently doesn't have a path toward legalization. There is no policy or way for somebody to apply to become a resident or a US citizen in the US. So they're really stuck in this status. Some information about the undocumented population overall. There is an estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants of all ages living in the US, and approximately 1.2 million of those are ages 18 to 24, so college age. 1.3 to 3.6 million undocumented students in the US are potentially eligible for various bills which have failed to pass Congress for the DREAM Act. So this really highlights the need for a permanent solution, specifically for undocumented young people. About 1.3 million undocumented youth live in the US, and they're potentially eligible for the DACA federal directive policy. So I mentioned this in 2 slides ago. This is an Obama era directive, so it's a program. This is not a legal immigration status. What DACA does is for specific undocumented young people who meet certain requirements, it provides deferral from deportation. So the US government knows that these undocumented people are here, but they're saying, you're going to school, you're contributing to your community, we're not going to deport you yet, and we'll give you a work permit. But again, this is not a permanent solution. And I also want to point out that in the current administration, there are no new applications being accepted for the DACA program. But those people who already have DACA are eligible to renew their status. About 65,000 undocumented students who live in the US for 5 or more years graduate from high school every single year, but only about 5 to 10% of them go on to college. And reasons for this vary, but for a lot of students, the main barrier to continuing their education is being able to pay for university. It's really expensive and there's no federal financial aid. Sometimes it's also lack of information or lack of resources. About 408,000 undocumented students ages 18 to 24 are enrolled in school, so college, throughout the United States. All right, so we can talk about undocumented young people in really general terms, or the undocumented community in really general terms. And this is often what we hear in mainstream media, a lot of generalizations, a lot of assumptions. But I want to use the analogy of a tree to talk about the undocumented community. So we can talk about this tree as a whole, as one tree. But if we take a closer look, we'll notice all of the branches, we'll notice the leaves, that they're each unique and different. So similarly, the undocumented community, although there is this commonality of the immigration status, the stories of each individual varies. So we cannot make assumptions or generalizations because every person's path can be a little bit different. Now, in beginning of June, I was part of an article by National Public Radio that focused on an undocumented young person, a high school student who had just graduated in the Bay Area and wanted to pursue higher education, but because of, again, lack of support or resources, she was facing a lot of difficulty in doing so. And the article also focused on my own path. I myself was an undocumented young person, an undocumented student growing up in California. My family and I came to the US when I was 8 years old, and I did all of my schooling from elementary school to university, and then my master's as well in the US while being undocumented. And I faced a lot of challenges along the way. If you're interested in reading that article and listening to that radio piece, the link is on this slide. I want to take a moment now to share a personal narrative. So this is a personal narrative that I wrote when I was working with Immigrants Rising back in 2011, 2012. And for me, creative writing and storytelling has really been a way of healing and processing. So I want to take a moment to share this piece called The Golden Door. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. The plaque at the base of the Statue of Liberty reminds us what this country stands for. As an 8-year-old crossing the border, I asked my mother, why are we going to the United States? She replies with the only answer she can give. If we stay here, we're going to starve to death. The year is 1993. I pledge allegiance. Every day, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for. This is my home now. It's no longer mexicanos al grito de guerra y retiembla en su centro la tierra. I miss my friends, especially my best friend, Carlos. My sister is my only friend now. We sit and eat our school lunches together. I don't like the corn dog very much. The taste confuses me. We watch the other kids play foursquare and tetherball. I feel bad for the ball, forever bound to that pole. I miss my spinners and my marbles. I miss my teacher, Señor Gomez. I miss learning in Spanish. Now I sit in class, struggling to understand what's going on. I like listening to my new teacher sing, "This land is your land, this land is my land. Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and Bingo was his name-o." I wonder how Clifford the big red dog got so big. He reminds me of Suzuki, except that she's not red. We couldn't bring her. I'm sure she's been waiting for us next to the front door of our house in Mexico for the last 3 months. My sister and I speak English, but really, it's just Spanish with our version of American accents. The year is 2010. I'm a high school Spanish teacher. Every morning when I wake up, it's difficult to remember the series of events that have led me here. College is done like a blur, like the taste of water. I don't miss it at all. I don't miss working 3 jobs while going to school full time. I don't miss sitting in political science class, learning about laws that work against me and rights that don't apply. It's difficult to explain how I got to this point. An anomaly, a fluke in the system, luck, hard work, all of the above. I see myself in my students. Sometimes I learn more from them than they do from me. I hear my undocumented students talk about their struggles, and I want to scream my truth. I want to yell out loud that I know what they're feeling. The hopelessness due to an uncertain future. The frustration of knowing that so much is out of reach. The powerlessness to change our situation. The fear of being separated from our families. Because I feel the same thing 100 times every day. I want to tell them that there are ways around the system, that their dreams are not unreachable. I want to yell, if I can do it, so can they. But all I manage to say is, we need to educate ourselves. Even if the possibility to have a career isn't available right now, when things change, you will have the skills necessary to be successful. I'm not sure they believe me. That night, I cry myself to sleep, bursting with guilt, still yearning to breathe free, still waiting beside the golden door. My story is not unique. It is a story of millions of undocumented young people across the country who are fighting every single day for an opportunity to learn, to grow, to contribute, and to belong. Now, I want to take a moment now to thank Quizlet for giving me the opportunity to share my story with you and for creating a learning platform that is so adaptive, so engaging, user-friendly, and that provides access to students of all backgrounds from all over the world. I know I wish I would have had Quizlet when I was growing up and learning English and throughout all of my schooling. And I'm so grateful that now Quizlet is focusing on the educator experience and working to create spaces where these important conversations can take place. I want to continue now with sharing some specific strategies. These experiences are happening all across the country, and I understand as well all across the globe as families are seeing the need to leave their home countries for various reasons. And I hope, I know that we can work to make it better, but right now there are some concrete things that we can do specifically with our local communities and at our institutions to support undocumented students. So we're gonna go through each of these in more detail, but just to introduce the 10 strategies: engaging with an open mind, creating a safe space, learn about relevant institution policies and legislation, find and advocate for scholarships and financial support, build your own educator network, connect students to undocumented community leaders and role models, involving parents, access reputable legal information and assistance, build agency and power, and create spaces for storytelling and creative expression. Again, the information that I'm going to share comes from Immigrants Rising website, so I encourage you to visit them. There's a lot more on there if you're interested in learning more about this issue. So to start, engaging with an open mind, we need to remind ourselves that there won't always be a single answer or path for all students because every person's experience will be different. And support requires ongoing investigation, collaboration with other service providers and community leaders. And we're not always going to have the answers, but it's important that we work with our students to find out answers so that we are empowering the student to go through that process themselves, but then we also are educating ourselves to be able to support other students and share that information with colleagues in the future. When I was going through high school and feeling alone, not knowing many other undocumented young people aside from myself and close friends, one of the first few people that I told about my status was my high school counselor, whom I love dearly and I still keep in touch with. Her name is Miss Mesquita. And I remember how supportive she was, how open she was, and the guidance that she provided me really made the difference between whether I would go to university or not. So I'm really grateful to her. And I think that we can all do the same for our students. Number two is to create a safe space. We cannot ask students whether they're undocumented or not. We might suspect, but this is not, it's not something that we can ask directly. But what we can do is to make resources available for all students. At my school, American High School, when our counselors give presentations to students about the college application process, they include information for undocumented students as they present to the entire student body. We need to understand that trust takes time, and also be mindful of the language that we're using. The preferred term is undocumented rather than illegal or alien, because the latter terms can be derogatory and offensive because they describe the person themselves as illegal rather than their status. We can also do all that we can to identify ourselves as an ally or a supporter. In my classroom, I have posters that show students can go to college. You can find stickers and bookmarks, or find other ways to make it visible so that students can identify you as an ally and know that they can trust you. Number three is to learn about relevant institutional policies and legislation. And these will vary from state to state, definitely from country to country. So understanding the admissions and enrollment policies for undocumented students in our local community is really important. There's a great website called uleadnet.org that is really interactive. You can click on your state and they'll give you information about the policies that are relevant to your specific location. Understanding deferred action for childhood arrivals. Again, the Obama era program that gives protection from deportation and a work permit to certain undocumented young people. Again, no new applications are being accepted, but students who already have DACA can renew and should renew their DACA. There's a website here that provides step-by-step information for how to do so. Again, staying informed about local and statewide immigration-related policies, about proposed legislation related to immigration policies. I will add to this also contacting local elected officials, sharing your opinions, your perspectives, and voting. Please, those of us who cannot vote, we're really grateful when people who have that privilege take advantage of it. So number four, finding and advocating scholarships and financial support. Again, oftentimes this is the #1 barrier for undocumented young people to pursue higher education. So keeping track of scholarships that don't require citizenship or residency to show students that there is financial support out there. There's two great resources from Immigrants Rising for undergraduate and graduate students that is updated regularly. And these are a list of scholarships that anybody can apply to. Sometimes scholarship providers ask about citizenship or for a social security number because that question has always been there. Nobody's really thought twice about it. But if we call or contact them and share a story of one of our students and say, we have this great student who is graduating high school, wants to pursue higher education, is trying to figure out how to pay for it, would you consider them? They might think twice, or they might change their application to be more inclusive. Number 5 is to build our own educator network, building relationships and collaborating with educators at our school and our district. And I think this is the beginning of that. So Quizlet, thank you so much for that. I'm reaching out to educators at local colleges who are supportive of undocumented students. This is a great way of sharing information and sharing ideas for how to support our students. There's also a mailing list by Immigrants Rising where you can learn about new resources, webinars, educator gatherings. So you can sign up for that. And also for the National Educator Network and campaigns at unitedwedream.org. Number 6 is to connect students to undocumented community leaders and role models. For example, myundocumentedlife.org, defineamerican.com, and phdreamers.org. When I was growing up, again, undocumented, and I didn't realize that there were so many people out there who shared my own experience. I oftentimes feel alone, and that can be discouraging. So for undocumented young people to have a role model who has gone through a similar experience and has succeeded to go to university and is now working or contributing for their communities, that can really make the difference between whether or not they decide to pursue higher education. Number 7 is to involve parents. This is really important because oftentimes in families without legal immigration status, there's financial hardship. So parents will ask their students, their child, to work to be able to support the family after they graduate high school. But educating parents about why it's important to pursue college, this is really important. When I was going through the college application process myself, and my counselor was my number one ally, supporter. She guided me through the process, and I made the mistake of not involving my mom. So she was surprised when I was accepted, but that's a disservice because I have younger siblings. And so if I had involved her in that process, she then would have had that information to support and guide my younger siblings to do the same. So it's important that we're involving parents in the college application and enrollment process. Number 8 is to access reputable legal information and assistance. For example, immigrationlawhelp.org has information about legal service providers in your area. There's also a legal intake service that is free and anonymous, and it's online, by Immigrants Rising, where undocumented people can submit their information, and then they'll receive information about any potential remedies or based on their case. This is actually how I learned that I had a potential remedy through political asylum. It was through this legal intake form. I didn't realize before that. And so I went through the process. And in 2015, I received political asylum. Next year, I'll be eligible to apply for US citizenship. So another resource that you can use is Beyond Deferred Action, long-term immigration remedies that every undocumented young people should know about. Again, sometimes we just don't know that there might be a remedy. It's not common, but if there is a remedy, we should encourage our students to seek legal help and to pursue those potential remedies. Number 9 is to build agency and power. We can do this by supporting students to create a group or a club to raise awareness, to build community at their school. Also, encouraging students to educate themselves about their rights. ilrc.org and nilc.org are great websites where you can learn about rights that apply to every person living in the United States, regardless of immigration status. We are not legal service providers as educators, but again, we can guide students to any mental, emotional health services if we see that that's a need. Also, informing students about how other marginalized groups have organized against their marginalization. For example, the civil rights movement, the women's rights movement, LGBTQ, Black Lives Matter, and on and on and on. Build faith, a sense of agency and a belief that things will change for the better. Sometimes students are discouraged because in the status quo, they might ask, why should I continue? Why should I go on to university when I might not be able to work afterwards? I'll have this diploma that I won't be able to use. And that's a real question and it's a real fear. But we need to believe that we have a lot of power, both individually and collectively, to change our communities. So having that sense of agency and belief that things will get better, they can get better. Again, this is really important. Last, definitely not least, is creating spaces for storytelling and creative expression. Again, for me, this has been a healing process, being able to enter spaces, experiences that were really difficult, but using those as self-empowerment and then sharing them with broader audiences to educate and to color the narrative, to diversify the narrative on undocumented people. So again, when it's safe, we can encourage students to share their stories. when I was working with Immigrants Rising, I also helped to create a website called thingsi'llneversay.org. This is a compilation of creative work by and for undocumented young people. You'll find other written stories, videos, audio pieces, pictures, drawings. There's a lot of work out there that can be inspiring. Also, support undocumented artists. Here's a link for 22 powerful images by dreamers. And encourage students to build their own meaning and identity that is different from the negative stigma and stereotypes about undocumented immigrants that is often used, especially in mainstream media. So that's a lot of information, but all of this information will be available online. And if you're interested in learning more, you can visit immigrantsrising.org. If you want to learn more about my own story, you can visit my website, julionavarrete.com. And now I would like to open it up for questions about anything that I've presented, or also how I use Quizlet with my students. I've been using Quizlet for several years, and it's a tool that is really effective. And I'm happy to share more information about that as well.